Hi, welcome to What number 16 and edition 22. And we're talking about the sons of Jacob coming to Egypt. Jacob sends his sons to Egypt to buy grain. And verse 1 goes on, when Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy for us there, that we might live and not die." So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, lest some calamity befall him. When Jacob saw that there was food available in Egypt, there's a reason to believe that this happens perhaps even in the first year of the famine. It didn't take long for the problems of the drought to affect the wider world and find its way to Jacob. The famine was not only an Egyptian problem, but a Middle Eastern problem, perhaps a worldly problem. And it became a family problem for Jacob. He says there, "Why do you look at one another?" Joseph noticed strange expressions among the brothers when Egypt was mentioned, because the brothers knew it was likely Joseph was sold as a slave there. Their conscience made them feel a little bit off any time Egypt was mentioned. The father, Jacob, he noted the perplexity in his sons' faces, literally. To look questioningly at one another is a way that it's put by one of the commentators. The word Egypt in their ears must have sounded like it must have been really, really hard for them, because they knew what had happened, but they weren't going to certainly say anything to Jacob. Joseph's brothers lived with this incredibly terrible secret for 20 years. They never talked about it, but it never left them. Any mention of Joseph or Egypt brought back amazing senses of guilt. They needed to be set free from this horrible secret. And it was going to happen, but in a way that they certainly didn't expect. Notice too that Joseph's younger brother is kept at home, lest some calamity befalls him. Because he lost Joseph some 20 years previously, Jacob lived in constant fear that it will also lose Benjamin, the other son of his favourite wife, Rachel. He kept a close protective eye on Benjamin. Jacob did not send Joseph's brother. He demanded that he would stay behind when the other 10 guys went off and did their trading. Only one son was as beloved as Joseph was. That's interesting, isn't it? Benjamin seemed to take his place, and Jacob felt that he needed to protect him. If Jacob only knew, if he could only trust the hand of God, which he could not see at this particular point. In fact, the only reason there was grain in Egypt to provide for the needs of Jacob and his family was because God sent Joseph ahead of them all. God knew what he was doing, didn't he? Now, famine is not a good thing, but God uses it. God can and does use material need or the lack of it in our life to get us to do things we normally would never do. Normally the brothers would never go to Egypt, but the need drove them there. The sons of Jacob are headed to Egypt. And we hear a little bit more about the story in verses 5 and 6. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over all the land, and it was he who sold to all people of the land. Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. This is intriguing. They bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. They knew that in this time of famine, their lives literally depended on this Egyptian official. Therefore, they paid him great respect. Notice, with their faces to the earth. The following verses will tell us that Joseph remembered the dream he had some 20 years beforehand, that his brothers would bow down to him. We can remember that from Genesis 37. And that's when Joseph's brothers plotted to murder him and then sold him into slavery. They did it with the specific intention to defeat those dreams. Instead, by sending Joseph to Egypt, they provided a way that the dreams would be fulfilled. This is bizarre, but when you look at it, God brings it all together. The great and glorious truth of God's providence here is he can and does use evil actions of man to further his good plan. This never excuses man's sin, but it means God's wisdom and goodness are greater than man's evil. Surely the wrath of man shall praise you, and that's from Psalm 76. We're going to leave it there today, because we're going to talk next week about Joseph recognizing his brothers. Bless you.